Well, hello everyone. Let's say a quick prayer before we get started. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity, Lord, to get up on stage and just share how you have changed my life, Lord. And I just pray that it just spreads hope in this sanctuary tonight and just gives one person the hope that they can change their life as well, Lord. I pray that your words be spoken and that the anxiety and the fear of being on stage is eased away. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So anyways, my name is Victoria, and I'm a grateful Christian in recovery from drugs and alcohol, and today I get to choose recovery. Hey! But isn't that a beautiful thing, though, getting to choose recovery? Because in active addiction, I didn't get that choice. But with the 12 steps in Jesus today, I get to choose recovery. So my sobriety date is 5/6/2016. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I also sponsor women. I also have a CA home group, Straight With No Chaser, and that meets Monday night at 8 p.m. at the Grace Church Central Campus. So anyways, yes, thank you so much for this opportunity to share my story with you guys. God has brought me out of some terrible situations, and I'm here now to testify of his greatness. So let's just start from the beginning, right? There's no other place to start in a book than at the first page. So I was born in Picayune, Mississippi in 1987, and I was put up for adoption at 17 months. I have a biological older sister and a brother who is 1 year and 4 days younger than me. And I just want to share something real quick, but I recently got in contact with that younger brother, that long-lost younger brother a couple years ago. Found him on Facebook with a friend of mine, and just say a prayer for him. He struggles with just understanding God, and anytime I post something about God, he always has, where does it say that in the Bible? So it's just keep a prayer for him. But my adopted mom told me that my birth mother was a drug addict who liked to party, and she didn't know who my father was. I now know that she was an addict, and I was told that me and my younger brother were left alone in a mobile home for a few days. The neighbor heard us crying, and he kicked in the door and called the police. My younger brother and I got put into an orphanage where I was adopted by a different family, and his dad took him in separately. So we were separated at 17 months old. My adopted parents were in their late 40s and had one daughter already. A few years later, they adopted my younger sister from a different family. When I was 5 years old, my adopted father had a heart attack and passed away, leaving my mom to take care of two little kids under the age of 5. I was diagnosed with bipolar and ADD at a young age and was put on lithium and Ritalin. I was a very antisocial child because of those medications. I don't remember a lot about my childhood. I'm not really sure if it's because of the meds or if it's just trauma that I just forgot things, but I really don't have a lot of recollection of anything under 13 years of age. But I do remember that I wanted to be liked, and I would people please at a very young age, right? I took $20 out of my mom's wallet, and it was back in the old school days where they brought a little cart of pencils into the classroom and everybody could buy a pencil. But I bought everybody pencils, right? Because in my mind, I thought that if I bought you something, you'd be my friend. And so if my mom told me to do something, I usually did the opposite. Being left alone a lot as a baby with my brother left me to take care of us, so I was used to doing things by myself. So it was very hard for me to ask for help. I usually had to figure out things on my own. So we moved to Jacksonville, Florida in 2000, and the next year, my mom told me that she was sending me to a troubled teens home called Camp Tracy in North Florida. I really didn't think I was a bad child, so I didn't understand why she was sending me here, right? Most girls were court-ordered that got sent there. And so this program was a minimum of a year, and some of the girls, again, were court-ordered there. My first month was the hardest. They immediately took me off my bipolar and ADD medication. So I detoxed off that, because I was on that for a while. I wasn't allowed to talk for my first 30 days, and I had to stay by this girl's side all the time. I would lie in the bed at night and cry, looking at pictures of my mom and sisters, wondering why they didn't want me around anymore. That was the worst feeling I've ever felt, and I never want to experience it again. I felt as if no one ever wanted me and I wasn't good enough. My birth mother didn't want me. and now my adopted mom is sending me away. What was wrong with me? I felt all alone in the world, and I am now forced to take care of myself again. At camp, you only left the property to go to church, and we went every Sunday and Wednesday. We even went to school on the property, so I did well in school there. You weren't allowed to make anything lower than a B. If you did, you had to take that course over, so I graduated with A.B. Honor Roll. We had devotionals every night. They taught me about God and the Bible, and they planted the seed in my life that has become the relationship I have with God today. I was baptized a couple of times, but honestly, though, it only did it because I wanted to fraternize with the boys, right? They sat on the opposite end of the service, the church, up there by the place where you got baptized. And so I never felt good about myself unless someone was giving me attention. The boys lived on the property, but they were 2 miles away, and we only could see them across the sanctuary at church. That's about the only time you ever got to lay eyes on them. You were not allowed to talk to them or look at them, right? And if you got caught, you'd be punished. You either got spanked with a paddle or you had to run laps. But that didn't stop me, right? I got in trouble a few times trying to talk to them, right? Passing them notes or talking to them as they drove by on their tractors. We had pigs and cows and would kill them for our food. We planted and harvested our own crops. The girls would cook for all the staff and boys, which was about 100 people. Like I mentioned, most girls stayed a minimum of 1 year. I was there for 5. My mom would visit me every Sunday at church, and after 1 year, I could go home for a week once a year. And in 2006, my friend Bobby was in the program with me. She had left already, and her mom came up for their graduation ceremony. Her mom asked me why I was still there. I was 18 and about to graduate high school. She asked if I wanted to leave and come back to Cape Coral with them, but I told them no. So I started talking to my mom about coming home, and she told me she wasn't ready for me to come home yet. I later found out that she was paying that pastor extra money to keep me there. I felt like she didn't want me to come home. Later that year, after Shelly and Bobby, it was a couple months later, they left, I snuck to use a phone because I felt like I was being unjustly, there was an unjust situation happening, so I snuck out to use a staff member's phone, and I called Shelly to come and get me. They drove up to get me that weekend with the cops in case they didn't let me leave. My mom didn't know until I got to Cape Coral. Then I finally called and told her that I left Jacksonville. I'm like, hey, I'm in Cape now, Cape Coral, Florida. Now living in Lee County, I was free to do whatever I wanted, and I wasn't used to that. I got my first job at Big Lots and started dating an older guy and moved in with him. He was in a band, so I started going out to the bars and started smoking cigarettes to try to fit in. I wasn't even inhaling the cigarette. I just wanted to look good like everybody else, so I saw everybody else doing it, so I wanted to. And at this time, I started doing cocaine occasionally. Eventually, of course, that relationship failed. And then I met Lisa at Hess, and she said I was perfect for her son. So I was in this gothic era back then, by the way. So we hooked up, and I moved in with him on the first night. We did a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs. He introduced me to meth, and I started smoking it. We did a lot of fighting. At one point, he broke my nose, and he broke the windows out in my car. But I always went back to him. I was looking for that unconditional love. I thought even if he beat me, at least he wanted me around, right? Because nobody else has wanted me around before. I eventually got a restraining order on him, and that's how I got away. I bounced around for a while, staying place to place, working at different jobs, but it would never last long because I would always party every night and couldn't make it to work. So Lisa let me come stay with her because I had nowhere to go. I had been kicked out of every place I had stayed, and she also gave me a job at her store. I did well for a while. I was maintaining my party life and my work life, or so I thought. Then I got involved in IV using my drugs. From then on, my life revolved around getting high. I have started stealing money and cigarettes from that store that I worked at, and eventually got back to Lisa that I was stealing from the store, and I got asked to resign. At this point, I had no income from my drugs, and a guy that I just met literally like the day before was like, hey, why don't we post you on Backpage? So anybody that doesn't know, Backpage was a website back in the early 2010s or whatever. It was a website for women to sell themselves. I made fast money, and I would split with this guy, because he would take me on each date. I'd give him 50% of what I made, because he was like the bouncer or whatever, made sure I got out safely. Eventually, it became not 50-50 anymore. He would take all my money and give me drugs as he wanted to. It became a trafficking situation, right? I got involved pretty much with it was a pimp of opportunity, right? Like, he had never done this before, but at that time, he just seen the opportunity and he took it. This went on for a while, and one day he beat me pretty bad, but I got away. But it didn't stay that way, right? It was my first time jumping out of a car that time. He apologized, and I went back to him. I was always looking for love. Eventually, he got this new girl, and I became old news. But I want to stop here for a second, because I forgot to write it in here, but it's so important. Recently, I was able to sponsor that girl that he left me for and walk her through the same things. And it was just a beautiful thing. She, is not at the same place in my recovery, but I was able to testify of how I'm able to forgive him, and I am looking for how I have caused him harm. And she's like, what? I'm like, I know. But I've come to that point in my recovery that I am looking for my harm in this relationship. And it's just all God. So at that time, it was either sink or swim, and I learned how to swim pretty quickly to keep up with my drug habit. I was IV using meth, heroin, and crack at this point, or pretty much whatever made me forget and feel good, right? But those are my three go-tos. I ran the streets in North Fort Myers for a few years, where I was in and out of jail for multiple prostitution charges, as you see in all my mug shots up there, and in and out of detox. I was well known by the cops. Eventually, I met another guy, right? And he brought me over the bridge into Fort Myers to make money. And there I split the money with him too. But this time I was smarter. I'm not gonna let the same thing happen like last time, right? This lasted a few months until I was pushed out of a car and hit Hanson Street face first. I had bit through my lower lip and was bleeding everywhere. I went to the hospital, and they told me I was 8 weeks pregnant with my son, Caden. I knew I needed to do something different, so I decided to go to detox again, and I followed through. A week later, I went to that detox in Salisbury. My mom kept telling me to abort the baby because I couldn't stay clean in the past. I had no intentions of staying at detox because I didn't think that I had a problem, right? I was just like, if I just stopped doing so many drugs, everything would be better. So so that guy that I had just met, that I was hanging out with, he's the one that dropped me off at detox. And I told him when he dropped me off that day that I'm probably not staying. I'm probably gonna come to your house tonight because I really don't wanna be here. But I didn't, I stayed. And I do wanna say, one of the big things that I saw in my life at that moment was the next day he showed up at that same detox. So there was my only opportunity of ever leaving and having a place to stay, because he was there. So that's what, God did for me what I couldn't do for myself in that moment. And I stayed and went to the TLC 28-day program right after that. I had never done any type of a program outside of this. If I did complete detox, which most of the time I didn't, I tried to go out, I would just walk out, and I would take anybody with me, right? I tried to talk all the people to come with me and leave in detox. I would usually go back out in the same situation because I had no game plan, right? While in the 28-day program, I watched God move I watched God move in my life in a way that I couldn't deny him. I had an arrest warrant at this time, which was one of the big motivations of going to detox, right? Because they can't come get you there. I had an arrest warrant for a failure to appear when I went into detox in the TLC's 28-day program. At 6 months pregnant, I thought it was best to go turn myself in. Got all my whites on, and I was prepared to sit for a while, since it was a violation of probation. But after they had processed me in, they gave me a bond. And if you know anything about a VOP, they won't let you bond out. So I didn't understand why this was happening. So I went to the lady and I said, well, I got a bond? And she's like, yeah. There's no charge that you're talking about in our records. That charge had disappeared. And I'll touch base on that a little bit later on. But after the 28-day program, I was introduced into the Jordan organization. It's a local nonprofit organization that helps women after sex trafficking. There I learned that I was a victim of trafficking. I had thought that trafficking was for girls that had been sold against their will, and I had just gotten involved with a pimp, right? But there I learned there are different ways you can be trafficked, and that was one of them. I'm extremely grateful that God put Into the Jordan in my life. They have a life skills group that I still attend every week since 2016, and they have taught me about my trauma and walking out of that life. They also gave me an opportunity at the time to better myself. I'm starting a job in April with a local human trafficking organization called One More Child, where I will be a peer mentor for sex-trafficked children. God uses even the worst situations for his good. I can use what happened to me to help children going through the same thing. I'm also interning with Into the Jordan, and I go and speak at local churches to spread the awareness of sex trafficking in Southwest Florida. After TLC's 28-day program, I started attending Grace Fort Myers campus because it was right down the street from TLC, and I could walk there. CR Monday night is where I found a sponsor and started working the steps, and I found a relationship with Jesus. I joined my home group, Straight With No Chaser, and started service in my home group and at CR, here and at the Fort Myers campuses. I am so grateful for this program and the life it has given me today. I was a shell of a person when I walked into these rooms. All I cared about was getting the next high and getting money. A vision for you from the Big Book states that we will come to a place in our drinking and using where we can't imagine life with or without drugs and alcohol, and that we will know loneliness as such few do and wish for the end. That was me those last few days. I didn't want to use anymore, but I couldn't see a life outside of the miserable existence I was living in. That same chapter goes on to say that there is a sufficient substitute, and it's the program, and it's this program, and that life will take on new meaning and friends will grow around you. Today I have some amazing people in my life, and I can't do life without them. So anyways, I just got married this past Monday. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, the pictures aren't up there because those were older pictures. But my closest friends showed up to support me, and it's because of this program that I have lifelong friends now. Steps 1 through 3 get me right with God. Steps 4 through 7 get me right with myself and get rid of the defects of character that caused me to drink in the first place. I have always thought that my problem was drugs and alcohol, but in truth, it's all the fears, resentment, selfishness, and ego. In steps 8 through 9, I get right with the world around me by making amends to the people I've harmed. And that, to me, was the hardest steps right there, having to go out and talk to those people that you've caused harm. But 10 through 12 is the steps that keep me free. I get rid of all the junk that causes me to drink and get high, but if I don't work 10 through 12 every day, I'll pick up again. Step 12 is where I give back what was so freely given to me. I will forever be in the red for all the bad stuff I've done. But with step 12, I can help another addict and alcoholic. Everything I go through in life, God uses it to help someone else along the way. Why wouldn't I want to give back what has been so freely given to me? God changed my life, and I love watching it happen in the lives around me. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and Dr. Bob's Nightmare says, I spend a great deal of time passing on what I've learned to others who want and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. 1, it's a sense of duty. 2, it is a pleasure. 3, because in doing so, I am paying my debt to the man who took the time to pass it on to me. And 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. Today I have 3 beautiful children, and I'm recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. There is hope today. So if you are new here, this can happen for you too. I suggest you find a sponsor and work some steps. This program changed my life, and it can change yours too. So I would like to leave you with my life verse, John 16:33. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. In the world you will have tribulations, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Jesus is saying that we will have troubles in this world and hardships, but he has overcome our troubles, and that no matter what we go through, he will never leave us nor forsake us. God became human and went through the same trials we did, and through him we can recover from our hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Thank you.